Well, hello neighbors, John, your whiskey neighbor here, and welcome to my backyard. We're outside again in October. Oh, no, it's November. And I'm not sure how many times I'll be able to be outside. There are a few flakes of snow in the air, but it's actually warmer overall than last time. Today we're going to take a look at a Johnnie Walker. I think this is my first Johnnie Walker on the show. So I'm going to take a look. We'll talk about the Johnnie Walker Green Label. You know, that's their 15-year-old blended malt. So this will be some thoughts about Johnnie Walker Green Label. Thanks for staying with me through the break. As I said, this is actually the first bottle of Johnnie Walker I've reviewed on the show, and I will admit that I have a slight bias against Johnnie Walker. It's not that they don't produce some really impressive and flavorful blends. It's that you see them kind of everywhere, and I will say Red Label is truly, for my taste, not a Scotch that I go for, but Black Label's okay. I like that, but I just for some reason don't reach for it. Green Label is a bit of an exception. Green Label is, it's a blended malt, so that means this is 100% barley, but it's blended from a variety of distilleries. I've heard their blend could be as complicated as 29, maybe 27, that kind of thing, but they highlight on the label where the majority of the malt comes from. So this comes from Talisker on Skye, Linkwood, that's Speyside area. Cragganmore would be Speyside as well, and then Islay would be on Islay. So those 1, 2, 3, 4, those four I think are the majority of this blend. Maybe it's all the blend, but I've read a variety of different sources that say actually they have other malts from other regions, but certainly from that. And of course, it has an age stamp, so the youngest malt in here is 15 years old. And as it says, blended malt Scotch whiskey, and that the malt is why we know it's all barley. There's no single grain or anything in here. So that's a little bit about Johnnie Walker. It's been quite a while since I got Green Label. I don't have any old bottles. And when I picked this up, I actually reached out to Mark from Whiskey Whistle, sent him a picture. I'm like, this is the new bottle, right? It looks new to me. And he said, yeah, John, this is not the... because in Canada, we've never given up Green Label. It's been available basically the entire time they've released Green Label. I know in U.S. market, for sure, it went away, and then it came back because of its popularity. But in Canada, we've actually always been able to get it. And I actually have a source, not a source, but a place that sells this for a good price. So I want to share a few of my thoughts on this 15-year-old blended malt. And then, a little bit about malts maybe in general, but we'll see what this one kind of smells and tastes like. On the nose, out here in the fresh air, I actually get almost a mineral water quality, which I don't normally get when I'm inside. But the nose is pretty light. There are some fruits, but they're fairly sweet, almost like a peach. Or a light pear, peach. And then a sweetness, like a mealy sweetness, maybe a honey. I think honey would be good. Almost already a malty sweetness. If you're familiar to Scotch, you might know what I'm saying. But yeah, some of that stone fruit sweetness, a light apricot, peach, and then there is a hint of something else, a little bit of earthy, a little bit of smokiness. I'm not going to say it's heavy smoky, but it's got a little bit of that in it. Yeah, mostly, I should say like 15 years, yes, but this one is released, I better say 43%, because that's what I believe it is. Somewhere on there, I should get confirmation, that this is released at 43% ABV. So a little better than the very, very generic 40% in so many blended scotches. But the nose to me doesn't bring forward a lot of alcohol. It's really quite quite approachable, quite well put together. Again, a little bit stone fruit sweetness, and then a hint of smoke, so a pleasant nose. All right, let's see how it tastes. Sancha. Palate is actually has quite a lot to say. At first, when you first bring it in, I think you do get just echoes that same sweetness, a little bit of honey, but a malty cereal note comes pretty quick, I would say. It also is a little bit spicy, not really peppery or cinnamony that I get on the edges of the tongue, but really a full mouth kind of a live spice, like a brightness to it. And then, as I'm finishing that, or maybe it's in the finish now. I've been talking too long, so I want to talk about the finish. But already in the palate quality for me, malty, sweetness, honey, some fruit, a general spiciness. It's a good coating quality, and there's a little bit of just a hint of that peat iodine, that medicinal peat. Not like it's very weak. This is not a peat monster by any means, but there is that earthy quality. And in this peat, for me, I do get a little bit of that, just a tiny bit of that medicine-y or iodine, but just a very little bit. But I wanted to mention it. Then the finish. Maybe I better take a second sip to remind myself. Yeah. So fairly vibrant palate, and then the finish does give a little bit of again that smoke char character to the wood that you can get. It is slightly for me. There's a slight bitterness that does come up in the finish, but then it echoes nicely back into a smoky, malty, cereal sweetness, maybe honey sweetness. Almost not quite bready, but it leans towards that. So even though in the nose I am getting some sweet fruits, through the palate and the finish, it does end up a little bit more appropriate to the snow that I'm getting right now. A little more into that earthy, peaty, smoky area, but all light. All right, and so that to me is a strength of this malt. Let's see if it changes a bit today with water. I don't generally put a lot of water in lighter malts, in the 43%. But I do find when you've got a blend that really is as complicated as this, that sometimes a little bit of water, not always, but sometimes a little bit of water can maybe bring out some of the secondary, because there are quite a few different malts going into this, even if it's just the four, and I really should have done better research. But these ones that they've highlighted here, they all have a pretty distinct character. And sometimes moving the ABV in one way can move what you're getting out of the Scotch. That's what I find anyways. So my notes would tell me I'd be getting something different on the nose, but maybe it's because I'm in the fresh air right now. Nose has stayed pretty similar. Maybe the light fruits are a little stronger. Maybe. Actually, the water continued the life in the flavors. I didn't actually separate that much, but where I was worried it might take away the spiciness or the freshness, it didn't really. It almost added to it. It enabled me to taste a little more of the fruits that I was getting in the nose, but didn't detract from some of that malty character that I was enjoying. And yeah, it didn't bring much to it, but it also didn't detract from it. Actually, it almost I almost picked up the spice quality of it. Now that's pretty interesting. So, thanks for joining me outside here on my back porch kind of thing, and listening to a little bit of my exploration with Johnnie Walker Green Label, their 15-year-old blended malt. Oh, star value. I actually think this is one of their better products, and certainly for the availability and the pricing structure that they've done for this bottle. I actually think you'll be hard pressed to find a better 15-year-old that has really quite a diverse range of flavors, and even those hints of smokes and a little bit of that medicinal peat, just a little bit. Please know if you're loving Islay and you're thinking, oh, John said there's tons of peat in here. No, that's not what I said, but it's there, and it speaks to, like, this is quite a breadth of flavor, and I quite enjoy it. So my star value is probably a little bit too high, but for me, this is a 4 to 4.5 star whiskey. Absolutely, I can get behind 4.5 stars even, which for a big brand like Johnnie Walker is a little tougher to give out. But this they have done right. And I happen to have a store down the street in Canadian dollars that has on the shelf for $55, which at that price, like, please, if you go in and you see, that's the same price as Black Label in our neck of the woods. So do yourself a favor and pick up the 15-year-old blended malt. I think you'll find a lot more character. The malt core in this one is fantastic, but it doesn't lose at different times in your drink. Some of that fruitiness from the Speyside and some of that smoke. Like, actually, they've done a decent job. Don't want to wax too much. It's under 5, but it is 4.5 stars for me. Thank you for joining me. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Happy Scotch Sunday, and we'll hopefully see you in about a week. Cheers.